Hello, I'm John Furrier with theCUBE, your host here at our New York Stock Exchange CUBE studios, part of our AI Factory series, the NYSE Wired programming community as well. A lot of buzz around AI factories. We're going to break that down and what it means for the enterprise. Hecht is here, Senior Director of Enterprise Products for NVIDIA, leading the way in the GPU era, the modern era of computing. And thank you so much for coming on theCUBE.
Yeah, John, it's a pleasure to be here. I watch your show, so I'm excited to be a part of it today.
You know, we really been loving the enterprise action, 16 years doing theCUBE, and I got to say, the enterprise right now is going through massive transition, large-scale systems. We're seeing all the mega data centers being built, but the high value area, we're expecting to see unleashed a lot of value extractions, the enterprise, as they move from IT systems to AI factory on-premise activity, some cloud, some on-premise, distributed computing, hybrid, all kind of come into play. All the top enterprises, large, medium, small, are all looking at new architectures because they want the applications. They want the AI productivity, they want the AI code assist, and they need the AI factory. So we are in this era. It's developing very, very fast, highly accelerated. Explain what the NVIDIA AI factory is for the enterprise, because this is something that's not really a debate. It's more of how fast can we turn it on, and what do we run on it?
That's right. That's right. And I think Jensen coined this a couple years ago. One of our GTCs, he started talking about AI factories, and it's been this great metaphor, and it is a metaphor to help us describe really the modern data center and how it needs to change and evolve to become that sort of center of excellence for AI that an enterprise can rely on to develop their IP and their AI and really drive results for their business. And so I like to describe the AI factory as it's infrastructure. It's the accelerated computing, networking, storage. Obviously, you need models. There's a layer of software in there, but it really doesn't become a factory until you add that enterprise's data, their IP that is embodied in that data, and you start to actually do inference and processing of that data and gaining insights from that data and creating those tokens is what we talk about, right? Yeah. Results and generating results based on that data. And then you really have a factory.
Yeah, and I asked that question a lot on theCUBE. What is an AI factory? And the answers can be simply, it's producing a lot of tokens to more complex. It's a storage fabric. It's a network fabric connecting a lot of high-powered chips and software together. So it kind of ranges. So I have to ask you, for the enterprise on this era, what is the playbook? Because they love this computing revolution and evolution. I mean, depending on how you look at it, it's a revolution on one hand, but an evolution from pre-existing IT kind of technologies, methodologies, mechanisms. So you're starting to see that. What are some of the build factors in this era that people should pay attention to? What is different? I mean, obviously, it produces tokens. That's the lingua franca for AI. What are they looking at? What's resonating with them?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I'm really talking to that sort of Fortune 2000, Fortune 3000 enterprises that are really trying to start their journey. And they really are moving from this model of primarily CPU compute infrastructure, right? x86 based data centers, which they have reliably refreshed every 3 to 5 years. It's a very predictable model. But now they realize AI is here and they need to change that model. And how do they do that in a really strategic and pragmatic way? And they realize that even, enterprises that we've worked with that maybe were early adopters and they used accelerated computing for training are realizing with the onset of generative AI, agentic AI, even the inference, even the production workload needs to be on accelerated system. So one of the things we work with Dell on, for example, is going with, through that refresh cycle, hand in hand with an enterprise customer, and Dell will help carve out with that customer, how much of that x86, body of systems should actually be upgraded to accelerated systems. So it's not necessarily even an increase in infrastructure spend. It's just spending your infrastructure, budget in a slightly more strategic way and gradually building in, room for accelerated computing so you can take advantage of these AI workloads. And we have a lot of, a very broad system, broad offerings of accelerated computing. So, we have PCIe GPU systems They understand that modern data center, they run the x86 applications, so you can still do, data processing, rendering, basic workloads on these systems, as well as start doing, AI on these systems as well.
That brings up the question around adoption patterns. You mentioned, they're comfortable with x86 and they want to migrate in the capabilities. A lot of the adoption we see is, okay, I see the future. I got the data. They see the value of the data. That's their intellectual property. They want to have these systems close to the data. That's one. Are there other patterns you're seeing in terms of sequence of events for these customers, and how do they progress?
Mm-hmm.
What's the playbook?
Yeah. What we see, and this is the journey we went through, is the first thing most enterprises do is they do an audit. How are we using AI? Who's using it? Are we building it ourselves? A lot of teams will start, DIY sort of chatbots, and they build their own. Or they have teams that are actually using third-party services. But a lot of times that, sometimes can put data at risk because teams might be taking data that's proprietary to the enterprise, and really protected IP and sharing it outside of the firewall. So the IT team then has this sort of hodgepodge, if you will, of AI applications and workloads that are running. We actually had the same situation here at NVIDIA, and so we invested in building out and are continuing to build out a really standardized platform for AI practitioners, so that they can actually use low-code, no-code tools. We have a whole ecosystem of partners that we've enabled with our library, so they can expose through these developer environments that our third-party partners have created. So an AI practitioner can quickly create their own application or a chatbot, even a deep research agent, but they can do it safely, and then in a standard way as well. So it's supported on our data center infrastructure, because once this AI workflow is actually created and the AI app is created, it needs to be deployed in the data center and managed like every other application in the data center. It needs to be secured, orchestrated, managed. You need to have role-based access, identity access to that application. And so the enterprise team, if they have a common standard development environment, they can be assured that what's created on that platform can be deployed and supported in the enterprise data center. And that was, one of the problems we had. We have a lot of different applications that we have brilliant teams have created, but it can't actually be, supported in our data center. Yeah. So the way to fix that is a standardized platform.
Yeah, a lot of misinformation out there. I want to get your thoughts on, because I think pilots, production workloads, we see on our side of the research on the market is that there's a lot of activity. There's a lot of misinformation around failed projects. And you can look at AI in the enterprise and you can squint through and slice data any way you want, but we're seeing a lot of activity because there are low-hanging fruit use cases where people can get going immediately. And so I think people tend to see the big bang. I want to see the magic pixie dust instantly and see instant transformation. In the enterprise, it's nuanced, right? So can you share your thoughts on this? Because I think this is one thing we want to clarify, is that we're seeing massive activity. Yeah, I mean, experimentation is going on. What did Thomas Edison say? I failed to create electricity 2,000 times. So there's a lot going on, but what's the real story? What do you guys see in the enterprise? Because there's proof of concept, there's pilots, there's production workloads. I mean, RAG is pretty much on a full tilt mode right now. It's going hard. It's escape velocity on search. And that's easy for text. So what are you seeing?
Yeah, so we're seeing, like I mentioned, like this big transition as enterprises do an inventory. If we, go back to that, they very quickly realize where AI is being used and where it's actually having the biggest impact on their enterprise. And I think it also helps enterprises to look at what are their processes and their workloads that would benefit the most. So like here at NVIDIA, obviously we do a lot of chip design. Well, guess what? That was the first workload we applied AI to. Was let's use AI to see if we can build and architect new architectures, right, for GPUs faster using AI. And we were able to do that. And that's how now we are able to, introduce new architectures every year, is because we applied AI. But that's for NVIDIA. Every enterprise needs to look at their business and see, okay, what is our core competency what is our most strategic process, and how do we use AI to really make that faster, better, smarter? And if you approach it from that lens, you will get better results because you're actually, really diving in and using AI in a very strategic way.
Yeah.
I think the other, you mentioned, failed projects. One of the things that I think enterprises end up getting trapped in is if they do a do it yourself, they take an open model, they deploy it sometimes without actually doing post training. They just take a model that's been trained on the internet and they deploy it into a chatbot, for example. The challenge with doing that and why sometimes these projects don't succeed is that model doesn't really understand its business. It hasn't been trained on the lingua franca of that enterprise, understanding the processes of that enterprise. And so you need to do this sort of post training, which is similar to if you hire a new employee, you don't expect them to be productive in the first 6, even 9 months. Because they're on a learning curve. They have to understand the business. That's what post-training is. It's onboarding your AI. It's educating it about your business and really doing, a new hire training for your AI workload, if you will, right? And if you do that and you invest in that, then when you deploy that into production, you actually have a really smart workflow that's going to be able to contribute results back to your business.
I just add that observation that we're seeing in this series and our other coverage is that once they get that discovery, it opens up new opportunities for them, and they see more innovation, and then that comes grounded in the data. You mentioned that at the top of this interview. I want to get into the data gravity side of it because a lot of people are seeing this is not a cloud versus on-prem. It's more of the data's on-prem. We want to keep it on-prem, so you have data gravity on premises. So then you got also cloud workloads too. So you have this hybrid environment. Could you share your thoughts on that piece of it? Because it's in some cases it's not an either or. In some cases it's both. In some cases it's on premises because of the data. So it's a unique situation where beauty's in the eye of the beholder, right? Depending upon what they have. So can you share your thoughts? Because the on-prem cloud debate or discussion or dialogue is really nuanced. It's situational.
It really is. And, it's also being influenced by sovereign AI as well, right? We're working with an enterprise partner right now, a software platform partner who is standing up data centers in the regions of their customers because their customers want their compute to be, where their workload is running. So I think there's a new ecosystem of actually cloud providers that is actually developing the neo clouds, if you will, right?
Yeah.
And Dell works with many of these, providers to build out their infrastructure. And of course, a lot of these neo clouds, we know them because they're helping the model builders and the AI native companies, right? The new big AI innovators, but they're also really interested in building out capacity and the full stack of software and tooling to help enterprises also run their workloads on these more regional, neo clouds. Yeah. And like you said, like, enterprises are going to be hybrid. Every enterprise is going to be somewhat of a snowflake. Each factory is going to be a snowflake. Yeah. And that's why NVIDIA's really made sure that our software stack and our tooling runs everywhere. So things like our NIM microservice, for example, that optimized runtime for when you deploy a model in production, you can run it in the cloud, you can run it on-prem, supports on a neo cloud or a colo. So an enterprise could actually move their workloads because maybe you start in the cloud, but you deploy on-prem. Maybe you're on-prem, but you want to burst to the cloud because you're doing some post-training. So I think it depends on the economics, where the data is, and then some of the security priorities, like you mentioned, of the enterprise, where they're going to actually want to run and deploy those workloads.
You mentioned Dell Technologies. I'm old enough to remember when servers were great and you buy a server and you load Linux on it. Hey, I got an OS. This whole full stack is a huge software opportunity. I want you to share more on that because, when I talk to customers of Dell and NVIDIA, they love the AI factory, but then the question is, what are we running on it, right? It's kind of an open question. And of course, they want to have software estate on there and they're pre-existing. And then I talked to Kevin Deerling at NVIDIA. It's like, oh yeah, we were talking KV Cache is the new operating system. Jensen said on stage at GTC that KV Cache is the operating system for the AI factory. Like he said it, okay, that's networking. So you have the combination of storage fabrics, network fabrics, and compute all kind of working together. It's not your old school, just load Linux on it. The operating system of a factory is super important. What's your view on this piece of it with the enterprise? Because they want these factories, there's demand. And now it's not as simple as saying just load Linux anymore. Linux is kind of everywhere. So
That's right.
what is the full stack? What runs the AI factory?
Yeah. Yeah. So, I'll just start layer by layer, right? So, at your foundation layer, obviously, accelerated computing, GPU servers. We work with partners like Dell. They have, a number of certified servers that, across our whole lineup of GPUs, air cooled, liquid cooled, graphics capable, just LLM, inference focused, like our B200, but a whole range of GPUs. And then, of course, networking, like Kevin, obviously already spoke about, is really important for performance and moving those workloads across the enterprise, across that data center. And then storage is really important. And recently we announced a validated design for integrating compute to a storage rack, so that actually you could bring the RAG, to the storage rack and actually turn the storage rack into a RAG system. So you can talk to your data through that interface to a retrieval augmented generation architecture, integrated into that stack, or an agent that's running outside of that stack can actually call on that storage rack, and all of the processing of that data, vectorizing it, tagging it, embedding, and then serving it up to a model is done really right there next to the data. So it's super secure, right? Really efficient, and you're not replicating data across the data center, which is also really important. But that's just like the foundation. Yeah. Then on top of that, you need full orchestration management. So, we make sure we support the full range of Kubernetes and orchestration partners, from, Red Hat to VMware, Canonical, Nutanix, which most enterprises are running one of those, right? And then we've really worked with the ecosystem to enable them to take our libraries, integrate it into their AI ops tooling, security tooling. There's a lot of great options out there for actually building your own, provisioned library of models, for example, and managing those libraries. So we work with those partners with our NIM microservice, so that the enterprise can curate their own development environment, low code, no code development environment, if you will, through these AI ops partners to enable their AI practitioners to develop and create AI. And again, like I was saying earlier, in a way that it will be supported, secured, have all of the great enterprise, guardrails, if you will, through identity management, et cetera, so it can be run actually and deployed in the data center safely. Because that's at the end of the day, for an enterprise, that's the holy grail. If they can't do AI safely, they're not going to do AI. They're not going to risk their business. They need to really make sure they do it in a safe way.
Security and safety is huge, and that's a great point about that. And I got to tell you, Dave and I and our team has been loving the innovation on NVIDIA, the systems architecture, the memory, all the speeds and feeds. We love that stuff, but it's an enablement, right? So I have to ask you about, as you go into the enterprise, it's an ecosystem world, right? So how do customers deal with the ecosystem? I know you guys have had a lot of advancements, partnerships. If I'm a customer, I'm going to need to run other things with NVIDIA. What is the state of the market for you guys on the ecosystem? Can you share a few points?
So enterprises have a heterogeneous data centers. Some of them are running, if you think about it, different Kubernetes platforms, different operating systems. So we really try to support all of the enterprise options out there that are already being used by our enterprise customers. So let's just take orchestration and management. We support VMware, Red Hat, Canonical, Nutanix, and we work with those partners to make sure that they are validated, tested on our platforms. And we even took the next step of producing a validated design that publishes and documents the partners that we're working with, as well as not just at that orchestration and management layer, but also upstack in terms of AI ops partners. So these are partners that are building, low code, no code development environments, as well as guardrailing solutions, security solutions, and they're leveraging our underlying libraries that are in our software, product called NVIDIA Enterprise, and they're leveraging Nemotron, our NIM microservice for running those models, but they're exposing them in a way that makes it super easy for an enterprise AI developer to leverage them and actually build out a full workload in their enterprise, but actually do it in a really safe way.
Yeah.
And the other way we're doing this is like really open sourcing a lot of our work. What we have been doing lately is actually we have a whole great family of models, our Nemotron models. We open source those models, shared the data sets. So they're really easy for enterprises to do that post-training exercise on. We are sharing the recipes on how to do that, and we're opening up the weights as well. So we talked about the need to customize AI. It makes it really easy and risk-free because they can see the data set for an enterprise to do some of that customization work.
I mean, having a platform or an operating system for AI like you guys are becoming is really key enablement to have an ecosystem flourishing. And I think it's a super important benchmark because it's not just partners, it's entrepreneurs, it's people building the software that will be the net new, in some cases, enhanced versions of pre-existing stuff. So I think that is going to be a big factor as we look at the growth of the ecosystem side of your business, which is phenomenal in the enterprise. So I have to kind of couch that as a lead into the final question, which is agents are hot. OpenAI just announced agentic feature. You're starting to see acceleration on the road to super intelligence, however you want to define that. People have different definitions, but clearly the world is changing super fast, and the reasoning workloads that are coming out of these factories are significant, game-changing. Altering markets. So we're seeing a lot of activity. What are some of the workloads on the agentic infrastructure side, applications you're seeing? Obviously, we see the low-hanging fruit, search, code development, but this is getting better, faster.
That's right. And it's super exciting. We went from a world where AI was, here's a data set of cats. How many, tell me the species of all these cats. And it was like a basic inference, workload, which, by the way, in most cases, that was probably done on CPU infrastructure. And then we went to generative AI, where the workload was, produce a cat on a horse, an image of a cat on a horse. And now we're at the ability to do deep research. So now you can prompt your AI, give me a report on cats and tell me which cat I should buy if I have kids that are allergic. And you can see, and then the AI goes off and works and researches that. And in the context of an enterprise, that agentic system can call not just the data and do research on your enterprise data, but it can call external systems if it's given permission to. This is where the enterprise, capabilities are super important. Just like you give a person role-based access, the agent has role-based access as well and can be audited and supervised. So you can manage what that agent is actually doing and how it's actually coming back and giving results to the human. And it can call on tools. It can do calculations that maybe the human didn't think about. And it can get feedback from the human. And then that data, the result of that, deep research can go back into the enterprise data system and continually be used to train the model and make that AI workflow even better and more intelligent. So it's super, exciting area. And like I had mentioned earlier, we took AI and we applied it to how we do our architecture. So our engineers are saving tremendous amount of time by using AI, getting to insights faster. We also use it to do security of our software stack. So we're, if there's a breach that comes in on one of the open source containers that we've leveraged, we can very quickly, within minutes, identify the risk to our customers, and then apply a patch, fix the risk, and generate actually new code for that piece of software. So we're able to automate, supply chain, code development, communications to employees, through our internal chatbots. And I think those are the workloads where we're seeing the most promise, right? Is really code gen is really popular, supply chain, chatbots, and of course, customer service is a really great area because a really good deep research agent can actually look at all of the history of a customer, make recommendations to a teller or a sales rep on what the next step should be for that customer in real time, right? And provide them with insights that manually they would otherwise have to do.
And it's been great to have you on, sharing your perspective. I know you've seen many cycles of innovation. So I guess my final question would be for the folks watching that are in the middle of their journey, starting it or leaning into it, Fortune 2000, Fortune 3000, they see the advantages of productivity gains, the things you mentioned. What would be your advice to them? What would you say to the folks watching, like, hey, what's the future look like? How do you do this? What's your message?
I think the message is just get started, start using it, and work with your IT teams to figure out how to make build out a standard way to bring it into your enterprise. But Jensen has said this himself, and he's obviously, a great inspiration for many of us here, is just get started. Yeah. Don't wait, because it is changing so fast. And reasoning models, we dropped in December, right? And now everybody's using reasoning. So, who knows what's going to drop, this Christmas, right? Who knows what's going to happen.
Don't you got to make a move. You can go faster.
Just, bend your knees, be agile, and get ready, for the serve. But, just get ready and start going. But don't be afraid. There's a lot of really great partners out there that you can leverage. We work with Dell with many of them. And the most important thing is to start on the journey. Well,
it's a lot of fun too. The upside is there, upside potential. The AI Factors is awesome. Thank you for sharing. As Senior Director, Head of Enterprise Products, you get the finger on the pulse. Thanks for coming on our program. We really appreciate it.
Thanks, John. It's great being here.
And Hecht from NVIDIA coming on, talking about the importance of AI factories and the importance of getting started and really taking advantage, because it is moving very, very fast. And folks that can get on the right side of history here will take advantage and reap the rewards. Of course, we're doing our part to bring you all the data we can here on theCUBE. Thanks for watching.